Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. We're sad to tell you there was a tragic school shooting today in Santa Fe, Texas. The shooter has been identified as 17-year-old Demetrius Pagoursis. Tonight we're learning much more about him and what took place at the school. We'll have an update on all of that in just a minute. But first, the left's love affair with the nation's deadliest criminal gang continues tonight. The howls of outrage reverberating. President Trump dared criticize MS-13 by calling them animals. Watch.
He basically seems to assume that everybody is part of MS-13. Very strange to hear the President of the United States speak in such dehumanizing terms.
Clearly, the president wants a war against Latinos. You might make that distinction between members of MS-13 and the rest of the Latino community and the rest of the immigrant community. I assure you that most of Americans don't make that distinction when he says we're animals.
When he says we're animals. Things are moving fast in this country. By 2020, defending Central American street gangs will likely be a key plank in the Democratic platform. It's close now. You can see it. Maybe Bernie Sanders will feel the burn a little more literally. Kamala Harris's campaign will certainly be stronger together with the added muscle of Guatemalan street gangs. But don't laugh. It's actually more plausible than you'd think it is. Don't believe us? Here's what CNN contributor Ana Navarro said this Wednesday about Trump's animal remark. Quote, Trump is in very bad company. Nazis referred to Jews as rats. Slave owners viewed slaves as subhuman animals. Now here's what Navarro herself had to say about Trump just 2 years ago. Quote, should Trump drop out of the race? Yes, he should drop out of the human race. He's an animal. Apologies to animals. Apparently, Donald Trump can be dehumanized, and that's fine. MS-13, though, a gang that butchers high schoolers with machetes, that's too far. But on the left, that's exactly the state of play as of this evening. MS-13 runs drugs, of course. It commits murders, and it terrorizes entire immigrant communities, but they don't ask questions about diversity, so they're okay. Questioning diversity is the highest crime you can commit, according to the left. Questioning diversity imperils their entire worldview. It suggests that people are not interchangeable, and the particular people who inhabit a particular country matter. That's unacceptable, far more unacceptable than, say, murdering a teenager in Long Island. That doesn't even warrant a serious attempt at deportation. Joining us tonight is Leslie Marshall. She's a progressive radio show host and a keen observer of the Democratic Party. Leslie, good to see you.
Good to see you, Tucker.
So you're seeing all the leaders of the Democratic Party, Schumer, Pelosi, its surrogates, the entire American news media virtually, singing from the same song sheet. This is a coordinated storyline. Who thought of this? What consultant convinced Democrats running in defense of MS-13 was a good way to go into the midterms?
Well, first of all, I think it was very clear, quite frankly, and I know fellow Democrats get angry at me, that the president was answering a question that the sheriff posed regarding the gang members. The issue here, Tucker, is not support of gangs or gang members. I have an 11-year-old son, and as you know, MS-13 starts as young as 11 and goes up to 40. It's calling human beings animals. Now, wait a minute. I know when you look at what MS-13 does, it's hard to say, well, are they human beings? When you have an 11-year-old child who is fearful for their and their family's life in a very impoverished area, and you think, how can I protect myself? And you're offered protection by some of these older MS-13 gang members, regardless of the fact they're going to beat you to a pulp or perhaps even take your life in 13 seconds, a very slow 13 seconds. You look to them because you think, how can I be considered tough? How can I and my family not be bullied and be protected?
I mean, look, you're right.
I don't think those 11-year-old children, quite frankly, are animals, and I don't think we should refer to human beings, even if they're bad human beings, as animals.
Well, but look, people have all kinds of reasons for doing what they do, and sometimes it's understandable, but, I mean, people had reasons for becoming concentration camp guards. But if I called a concentration camp guard an animal, you would say, you know, he's not strictly speaking an animal, he's a human being, but I get it, he's horrible. Like, you're expressing your outrage at what he does. If I said that, no one would bat an eye. But that's because concentration camp guards aren't potential Democratic voters. I mean, this is really about winning a constituency, isn't it? This is a political decision Democrats have made. We're on the side of MS-13, not because we love murder. I'm not saying Democrats love murder. I don't think they do. But they don't want to alienate anybody on that side, including, I guess, MS-13 members themselves. I mean, let's be honest about what's happening.
I don't agree with you there, although we are certainly in an era where left or right, a lot of things come into the landscape and are argued for political gain, especially with midterm elections coming up. I don't think that's the point here at all, Tucker. I mean, you know that we liberals claim to be pacifist. We claim to care about everyone, and it is the terminology that is very unsettling to a lot of people in the Democratic. Yes, liberals are pacifist.
Liberals are pushing, I mean, you're watching liberals across the spectrum from, Nikki Haley to Chuck Schumer pushing for more war in Syria. They're bloodthirsty, actually.
When did Nikki Haley start wearing a Democratic cape? I must have missed that one.
And she started pushing for more pointless wars. But here's the point. If I came out and described a concentration camp guard as an animal, nobody would have a problem with it. I certainly wouldn't have a problem with that. You wouldn't. No normal person would have a problem with that. Normal people don't defend murderers, but the Democratic Party is defending MS-13. And I'm just making a political observation, which is that's not a wise strategy going into election because normal people aren't going to go for that, are they? Or maybe they are.
I'm going to go back to your concentration camp argument, okay?
Yeah.
Being that I have one Jewish parent, I think you know, and being that I have relatives that did perish in concentration camps, there were a few types of guards in the camps, quite frankly. One would be fellow Jews who wanted to survive and have a lot of guilt, and there are many documentaries about that too.
Okay.
There are many people that said they were just following orders. They were not referred to as animals, and quite frankly, many of them escaped any type of criminal
Look,
wrath.
I don't want to get off on a World War II tangent, and that was one of 100 examples. Jeffrey Dahmer, anybody who commits murder for the pleasure of committing it, I think it's fair to criticize in the harshest possible terms, and it would be surprising if an entire political party came to that person's aid and defense, as the Democrats now are to MS-13. And I'm just asking, whose idea was this? It's not happening accidentally when you have John Harwood from the New York Times and Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi saying exactly the same thing. Somebody thought up this line. And I'm just wondering, do you think it's a smart thing to say?
I don't think anybody thought up the line. I think what happens, and is happening almost every day, is the president says something or tweets something, and then there's a reaction, and certainly there's a strong reaction on the left, and there's been a reaction in the Latino community because a lot of the headlines were that the president said this about all immigrants at first, and then when people read the transcript or they listened to the actual taping of what occurred in that meeting, then it became more clear that he was speaking about MS-13, and it was a response by the sheriff's question regarding MS-13. But you also have to remember, Tucker, some people that are in MS-13 in this country begging not to be deported aren't a part of the gang. They just can't get out because the only way out is to be killed.
But let me ask you this, and final question, but this is the deep irony undergirding all of this, which is MS-13 preys upon immigrants. I mean, who do you think their victims are? Overwhelmingly Honduran, Salvadoran immigrants, often illegal, by the way. So if Democrats say, we are the champions of immigrants, why are they defending people who prey upon immigrants? It doesn't make any sense.
I don't feel that Democrats are in any way defending murderers. I feel that Democrats are saying that the president's choice of words was not palatable for them, and that no human being, how terrible a human being they may be, should be called an animal, because an animal doesn't choose. They're part of the life cycle.
All the time. But hold on, let's be honest. They're holding the president to a different standard than they're holding MS-13. If you came out and said Trump is an animal, I don't think for a second Nancy Pelosi would give you a lecture about Christianity or whatever she was pretending to believe the other day, the spirit of God in every person. I mean, they wouldn't even notice it because they think Trump is an animal, right? But they're offended when you say that about a Salvadoran street gang? I mean, it's a sincere question.
Honestly, I'm not a fan of the president, but I would defend him if somebody called him an animal, because I don't think a human being should be called that. And a president should be at a higher standard
liberal.
than a gang.
And I hope you will denounce that. I can't even remember her name, but that CNN contributor is always getting crazy on TV who called him an animal. Anyway, Leslie, thank you. It was great to see you.
Good to see you, Tucker.
Dan Bongino, a former Secret Service agent and NYPD officer, also contributor to NRA TV. He joins us tonight. So as a political matter, I know that you ran for office. You know politics from both sides. Do you think it's smart to run in defense, and they are defending, MS-13?
Tucker, this is the genius of Trump. Whether he plans these things or they're just extemporaneous moments when he says them, which they probably are, that's not the genius in calling them animals, although I agree with him 100%. The genius is he doesn't apologize. He doubles down. And listen, I'm no big fan of the establishment GOP swamp rats. They're not necessarily the geniuses in D.C., but I can tell you this, Tucker, assuredly. The Democrats are most assuredly the dopiest party in D.C. because they constantly get baited through their anti-Trump animus into doing things they wouldn't ordinarily do. Coming out and defending a group whose motto is rape, torture, and kill, and going, hey, listen, they're just human beings. I love Leslie. She's my friend, and I think she's great. But some of that commentary was outrageous, Tucker. I mean, think about what she said. Yeah. We're not comfortable with anybody being called animals. Let me get a little list for you of things the Democrats are comfortable with. They're comfortable calling NRA members terrorists, Obama comparing Republicans to Iranian hardliners, tyrants, calling Americans deplorables who vote for Trump. None of that seemed, I mean, really? I love Leslie to death, but the phoniness of these comments is a little bit too much.
But you're absolutely right that Trump baits his opponents into getting so far over their skis that they're kind of exposed as the lunatics they are. And by the way, they weren't this way 2 years ago. I don't think that Chuck Schumer, who's a pretty smart guy, a sober guy anyway, and a calculating guy above all, would have stood up 2 years ago and defended MS-13. He never would have done that because that's crazy. And now he is.
Tucker, the examples are legion. Think about the running on the wall and that Mexico was going to pay for it. The wall is pretty practical. But honestly, Mexico, the counting of that's probably not. Trump knows that. But what does he also know? The counting there is probably not going to work, right? He understood. The beauty of this is he never apologizes. He never backtracks. And the Democrats, instead of giving some kind of a reasonable answer and counterpunch, what do, Tucker? They come out and go, open borders. Everybody should come into the United States. Everybody has a claim to the United States citizenship all over the world, and we all should pay for it. And the beauty of it is Trump is the first candidate to not back down, not apologize. But this is the key. By doing that, he gets the Democrats to pull their pants down and show their butts for the first time. I don't mean literally, obviously, but show the American people who they really are. And this is what turned off Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania swing state voters. The Democrats jumping to the opposite perspective.
No, it's as a political matter, it's brilliant. The downside is if people who would defend MS-13 ever take power, real power, we're in trouble.
It's dangerous. And they're frauds, too, Tucker. I mean, them jumping to religious defenses, quoting the Bible about calling people animals. The same people, but I mean, let's quote the Bible. I knew you in the womb. How about that one? It's interesting that
the abortion
actual
party
human
is
beings,
quoting the New Testament.
Right, actual human beings in the womb aren't human beings, but MS-13, God forbid we don't refer to them as human beings. I mean, the phoniness of the whole thing just stinks.
I know. Nancy Pelosi, who's like an absolute extremist on the question of abortion, lecturing us about Christianity. Dan, great to see you. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Top Obama officials have moved from denying that they spied on the Trump campaign. Now they simply say that spying was a good thing. Was the Trump campaign the victim of a setup? Amazingly, it's starting to look that way. We've got details ahead.
This is a Fox News alert. I'm Trace Gallagher. 10 people are dead tonight in Santa Fe, Texas, the latest victims of a school shooting. A suspect is in custody. Let's get live to Casey Stiegel. He's in Santa Fe with the latest. Casey.
And Trace, in a moment, we will take you to a prayer vigil that is happening across town to honor the victims. But first, that teen gunman, he has been arraigned, making his first official appearance before a judge in court not long ago. 17-year-old Demetrius Paguertas has been charged with capital murder of multiple persons and aggravated assault of a public servant. The U.S. Department of Justice has given an indication additional federal charges could be likely. Right now, investigators are still trying to determine a motive. They're also interviewing two persons of interest to see if they were connected or if Paguertas acted alone. Investigators have said 2 guns were in the shooter's possession and they belonged to his father. Aside from private journals recently located on the suspect's computer and cell phone, reportedly detailing the school shooting, friends and fellow students say he seems, quote, normal, no red flags. So those unanswered questions make trying to understand all the more difficult. Tonight, hundreds of people from this small community holding that prayer vigil at a nearby bank, attended by the governor and many who have been personally touched by this tragedy, which is nearly everyone who calls this part of Texas home. Trace, Santa Fe, as you know here, very, very small, a tight-knit community, one where everyone practically knows everyone. Back to you.
Yeah, Casey Stegall live for us in Texas. Casey, thank you again. No signs at all of any mental illness, no threats, no vendettas. Now back to Tucker Carlson.
Well, despite many campaign promises and a majority in both houses, congressional Republicans have continued to fund Planned Parenthood to the tune of billions and billions of tax dollars every year, amazingly. Now, the Trump administration is taking unilateral action. The administration plans to issue new guidelines that would bar any facility that receives federal Title X funding from performing abortions in the same building. The move obviously is aimed at Planned Parenthood, which performs 40% of all the abortions committed in America. Lila Rose is the founder of the anti-abortion group Live Action, and she joins us tonight. Lila, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Tucker.
Is this a meaningful step?
It's a big step. I mean, Title X has been a slush fund of money of $60 million a year for Planned Parenthood, coming right from taxpayers, going right to the biggest abortion chain. So to cut that money, you still have over $400 million they're getting through Medicaid reimbursements, but it's a big step in the right direction. The big question now is enforcement going to happen? Once this rule goes into effect, we need to make sure that the enforcement happens and that they're not weaseling their way into getting more money to facilities that are referring for abortion.
And, of course, you have to imagine it will be blocked by a federal judge somewhere along the line.
There's always a bit of blocking by judges, pro-abortion judges. That usually happens.
That's for sure. So Planned Parenthood takes this money, hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayers' funding every year. It's obviously a component of the Democratic Party, which is its own conversation. But it raises an obvious question, which is there are no other private sector organizations that can provide the health care Planned Parenthood provides, but that don't supply 40% of the abortions in this country.
It's ridiculous. There are literally thousands of federally qualified health centers that are far more qualified to provide holistic care that don't commit abortions that could receive both the Medicaid reimbursement money and Title X money, and there are other providers that can receive that money. But Planned Parenthood is, again, in the pocket of the DNCs, in the pocket of Planned Parenthood, and once they get their $500 million of money a year from taxpayers because of the Democrats, unfortunately right now, and the Republicans in some ways enabling it by not fighting it enough, then they turn around and fund the Democrats in their election. So it's a real pass through of money. But look, this is a corporation, Tucker, that's killing 320,000 children every single year in this country. They're in scandal after scandal. Their other services that they claim to provide have gone down according to their own annual reports. Their total number of patients have gone down, Pap tests have gone down, no mammograms, prenatal services almost negligible. Abortion's their cash cow, and they're going to fight this new rule from Title X from the administration tooth and nail because this is the way that they survive.
Any idea, if you were to strip out the federal funding from their budget, what percentage of the money Planned Parenthood takes in every year comes from abortion?
So
Any idea?
For clinic income, they're making, so the actual money they get from their clinic operation. So it's not the donations from George Soros and Warren Buffett. It's not the donations from taxpayers, the $500 million a year from taxpayers. It's about 50%, nearly 50% of their clinic income is from abortion. So if you strip away the money from the wealthy pro-abortion billionaires, and you strip away the money from the abortion activists, and you strip away the money from taxpayers, you're really left with abortion being the cash cow at Planned Parenthood. A few $100 million is left of clinic operations, and of that, it's well over $100 million in abortions.
So it's all about abortion, obviously, and let's stop pretending. So the core Democratic argument
politically,
is,
in every way,
if we have more abortions, the Democrats are telling us we'll be happier. Do you think that's true?
It's horrific. How dare they say that to women and girls? This is a line that is so, post-sexual revolution. It's outdated, it's antiquated, it's outright false. It's abusive, it's killing children, but it's telling women that somehow abortion is good for them. Abortion is not health care. Abortion is an act of violence against a child who's innocent and forming, and against a woman's body. This is a shame. It's a scandal. And so when you have Democrats or you have folks getting up there pretending to care about women and standing up there, Maxine Waters, whoever it is, and saying that they represent women, shame on them. It is the furthest thing from the truth.
No one ever calls them on it, but the core assumption is a lie. Lila Rose, thank you.
Thanks, Tucker.
Look, increasingly looks like the Trump campaign was the target of a concerted spying effort, not by the Russians, but by the Obama administration. Details on that next. Well, it looks like there actually was a sinister espionage plot in the 2016 election, but it wasn't committed by Russia. Instead, it was committed by our own intelligence services under the command of the Obama administration. According to House Intel Chairman Devin Nunes, there is reason to believe the 2016 Trump campaign was, quote, set up from the very beginning with a Steele dossier and other pretexts used to justify an FBI investigation that flowered into the mess we're now watching unfold. Former Obama intelligence director Jim Clapper says that if the Trump campaign was spied on, that's a good thing. Watch this.
The focus here, and as it was with the intelligence community, is not on the campaign per se, but what the Russians were doing to try to instantiate themselves in the campaign or to influence or leverage it. So if there was someone that was observing that sort of thing, well, that's a good thing because the Russians pose a threat to the very basis of our political system.
Kim Strassel is on the board of the Wall Street Journal editorial page, and she joins us tonight. Kim, so you just heard Jim Clapper tell us it's a good thing. Do you think it'd be worth just putting a permanent FBI or CIA spy in every presidential campaign going forward?
Why not? It sounds like it would be a good thing, Tucker. I mean, look, you and I have been doing this for a long time. Can you think of any time in history when this has happened or when anyone thought it was okay for... By the way, the Department of Justice is being run by one political party, electronically surveilling, and then also spying on the leading candidate and nominee for the opposing party running for the presidency.
It's almost too big to get your head around. And you've got to think that in any other moment, in the last 50 years, if this came to light, it would be considered a stop the presses moment. It would be a legitimate constitutional crisis and a scandal. People would go to prison. And yet this is passing almost without comment, except really on this channel and at your newspaper. Why?
Well, the mainstream media doesn't want to have to put this the way it is because they still want the Russia collusion narrative to be true. They still want a pretext to get this president out of office. And so people are no longer using standard measures. Look, I'm a libertarian. I don't want a government spying on anybody in any situation that's illegitimate. And so I try to put that same measure out there. But one other thing, too, that I think is so astounding and that also deserves some note is the games that the Department of Justice is playing in terms of coming clean with this information. They have now flouted a subpoena from Chairman Nunes for weeks, saying that there's no way they can give him the information he wants because it might put this source of theirs at risk. And yet they have, over the past couple weeks, leaked more information about this person than was prior known and would be known. And they're doing it all in order to get friendly media to write stories about how they did everything right in 2016, which, of course, we know they didn't.
This person, the mole who fed the information to the feds from the campaign, there's been a lot of talk about this person and whispering about his identity. Apparently, it's an older man. Do we know who this person is? Can we say with certainty? And if we find out for sure, I mean, what are the consequences of that?
Well, here's the joke. I mean, I'm 99.9% sure that I know who this person is. I did not get that from any congressional sources, but I also cannot get them to confirm it, so I haven't used the name. But the funny thing is, Tucker, is that one of the reasons I'm so monumentally certain that I'm correct, and I'm sure you are too, is because of the details the Department of Justice itself has leaked about a source that it claims to so much want to protect.
Why would, I mean, take 3 steps back. The President of the United States is at the top of the executive branch pyramid. The Department of Justice is beneath him. He runs that agency. There's a picture of him in the lobby of it. Why doesn't he pick up the phone at some point and get this information? It's not clear why. Are his lawyers telling him not to? What's the answer? Do you know?
Yeah, my understanding is, despite some of the things that the Department of Justice has said, is that they have been given an order from the highest ranks to accommodate this request. But they are using that word and the wiggle room that it gives with as much enthusiasm as they can. And so what they're doing is Chairman Nunes wants to see the documents. He wants to look at them himself, and he knows exactly what it is he wants to see. And they're saying, no, you're going to have to be satisfied with us just briefing you on it. Well, we all know what that game is. He'll go in with questions, they'll dance around, they won't give the whole picture. And we know that's the case because that's how they have reacted every time they've been faced with a request for information that might be potentially embarrassing to them.
This is just so dysfunctional in third world. And your column, by the way, one of the few functional parts of all of this. Thank you for your reporting, Kim, and I hope you'll keep it up. Thanks
Thank you
for that. Almost 36 Defense Department personnel have died in plane crashes in just the past 8 months. What's going on? Is something going on? Looks that way. We'll get that story to you next.